Good morning, and good morning, guys. Welcome to another episode of Exit Strategies Radio Show. I'm your host. Yeah, y'all know who I am. I'm Colin J. Millett, broker and owner of Exit Realty, Low Country Group in beautiful North Charleston, South Carolina. So, guys, we have set up today a fantabulous show. All right. So, guys, we're going to have a blast and a great conversation today talking about what is going on out there in the market. So, as always, guys, we always seek to bring great guests, great perspectives, and commentary to this platform, to this show, to help you, the consumer, out there in this market, or maybe you're an agent out there in this market trying to understand what needs to take place, how things need to be done, how can I position myself to win in everything that's going on, all right? So, guys, look, we have invited to the table today none other than Alan Donald. Yes, he's the leader of the Alan Donald team over at Keller Williams Realty, Charleston, Mount Pleasant. Donald, how you doing today?
I'm great, Corbin. How are you today?
I am fabulous. Thank you so much for taking the time to join us. Thank you so much for what I know will be a dynamic conversation here today, and something useful and relevant will present itself for our listeners. So, Donald, if you don't mind, for our listeners, if you don't mind, tell them what got you into real estate. Give us a little bit of history about you and what got you here.
Okay, so it's a long story, actually. So I'm originally from Colombia, South America, and hence I'm Spanish speaking. That's my first language. And a long time ago, I went to Australia, and I was there. I was a commercial industrial realtor in Australia for about 7 years there. And then I did a bunch of other things, and we ended up in Charleston because my wife's family lived in Hilton Head, and she got a job here.
Okay.
And so I started looking for jobs here, and I decided to go back into real estate, and this time into residential. So I've been selling homes here in Charleston since 2004 now.
Wow. Okay, that's a lot of history, man. That's awesome. That's awesome. So you said, what year you got started again?
Here in Charleston, 2004.
That is awesome. That's awesome. So you've been doing this for a little while.
A little bit, yeah. I've seen a few ups and downs.
So that's interesting. So you have been in the business prior to the recession. I just had this conversation recently, one of our other episodes, that we've been here. We done seen this before, so to speak. But before we got quote unquote on air, we're in the studio. We're just kind of having this conversation. So I want to kind of bring you back or take you back to it, and then we'll circle back around definitely on that, because you have a lot of insight to provide regarding now versus then, and kind of what we quote unquote expect. But one of the things that you list a lot of properties, am I right?
I do.
Awesome. So if you had to, or were able to, quote unquote, give advice, not in an individual setting, but in a mass setting, to potential or prospective sellers of homes in the Charleston market or in Charleston region, what would that advice be?
Well, in order to get the best price possible, I think, I mean, you've been in this business long enough to know that in the last 15 years, it's changed dramatically, 180 degrees. Before, if you wanted to go see homes, you had to come to a realtor's office. We had those big books with the listings that got updated once a week. And we owned the information. The client didn't have any information. Well, now with the internet and all the portals, the client and the buyers know the same as we do. And so our job is more how to interpret the barrage of information that's out there in the internet, and how to help our clients negotiate through this very challenging market, because it's a dynamic market, and not things that worked 5 years ago don't work anymore. So if you're a seller and you're thinking of cashing in at this fantastic seller market opportunity, there's a couple of things that are three things that are very important. Preparation is one. You really need to make your house shine, make all that deferred maintenance, those repairs, so that it presents perfect. That's the only way you're going to get top dollar for your house. And second, pricing. You have to have strategic pricing, because even in a seller's market, you can go overboard and overprice a home, and that's not a good idea. And the third one is promotion. You need to be where the buyers are. The National Association of Realtors said that 95% of the buyers start their process online. So you have to be heavily on online advertising, pay-per-click, social media, to be able to broadcast your listing wherever the buyers are, which we don't know. It can be next door to you. It can be in Japan. We don't know.
Yep, that's very true. And oftentimes, I mean, so, prime example in our current climate, people think, I literally just had this conversation a few minutes ago, but oftentimes people think that what we do is easy. You make it look easy. It's a lot of work, but you're a very good agent. You're a great agent. So in turn, to the consumer, it looks like you didn't do any work. But the process, so giving that advice to a seller, the process for you as an agent, what does that look like to help a seller to navigate, okay, hey, the thought process of I'm thinking about selling my home to, okay, let's get it on market. And, I've already done all the work, if you will, deferred maintenance items I've already addressed and all those things. What does that look like for you from that point going forward?
Well, the first thing that we normally do is actually walk through the house with buyer's eyes, because seller's eyes and buyer's eyes are completely different. and this is where experience counts. That you can see things that the seller doesn't see. The seller doesn't see the little crack, and the seller doesn't see the little rod that would not comply with the CO 100. All those things are important to note and fix before you put the house in the market, because if you fix it before, you can use whoever you want. But once you have it under contract and it's a repair item, you have to have a licensed contractor. Those are in short supply and they charge more.
Yep.
So those things are important to note. Then we put a lot of effort into the pricing strategy, because, a house is not worth an amount. It's worth a range. But that range, wherever you place it in that range, sends different messages to the marketplace.
Okay.
You put it at the bottom, you will attract all the bargain hunters and everyone who's stretching themselves to reach to that limit, which are probably not very solid buyers at that point. So you're going to attract a lot of offers, but most of them are probably not great. If you price it at the top, it might, entice some yawns and, very little activity, very few showings, and maybe one contract that is trying to hammer you down on the price. And it'll be that buyer against the seller. However, if you price it in the middle, you will attract those buyers that are ready, they're looking, they perhaps have lost one or two already, they know the market, and they see your home, and they like it, and they put a solid offer because they want to win it this time. Those are the offers that are really good. So, in my opinion, pricing it in the middle of the range is the best option possible. Now, once we price it, once we prepare it, we actually bring in a staging consultant. Because what happens is, to be able to appeal to the widest variety of public, you need to depersonalize, declutter, and stage the home so that it attracts all kinds of people. We have a saying, you say there's two kinds of buyers, those that have imagination and those that don't. The ones that have imagination look at any house, whether it's staged or not, and they can envision their furniture, their TV, their couch. The ones that don't have imagination come in at a place that is very personal to someone else, and they think, oh, I can't be here. I don't see myself living here. So the job of the stager is to make it as neutral as possible so it appeals to a wider variety of public. Once we do that and we stage it, then we take professional pictures, 3D tours, because now with COVID, a lot of people just want to do it remotely. And then if they're interested, then they're more serious, and then they can go and inspect it in person. If they're out of town, a lot of people see it on FaceTime now, which is another change that we didn't have 20 years ago. And then once you present the best way possible and broadcast it out online, it's a matter of finding those great buyers, hopefully from a seller's perspective, attract multiple offers so that in that way, the buyers are competing against each other, not against you, the seller. And that's probably the best scenario to get the top market price. Makes sense.
So, one of the things that you just touched on in there by pricing, obviously you got a range and being in the middle versus being the other way. And you're, spot on, in my opinion. I agree with you wholeheartedly. When you're at the top of the market, sellers miss this. There's an old saying, and put this out here to see if you agree with it. But there's an old saying that typically your first offer is the best offer. I mean, that's the best opportunity. It may not be number-wise the best, but the first offer typically is the person that you may stand a better chance of negotiating a deal with. Do you agree with that or disagree?
In general, I agree with one exception.
Okay.
Recently, we've had a lot of institutional investors that just throw cash offers at you.
Yep.
Those are not the best offers. They might be the first ones, but they're not the best ones.
Okay.
They always have some way of getting out.
Yeah. That is fair. That is fair. And obviously, we're going to pick up. You just touched on a subject that I definitely want us to chat with. We're quickly coming up on our first break, but I want to have this conversation. So for our listeners, guys, I want you to stay tuned. I want you to hold tight because we're going to have a conversation about our buyers. All right. So our buyers are institutional buyers, investors. All right. So these groups, these people that buy these properties from wherever, however, and those are the people that we're competing with. And for our listeners, if you haven't I haven't watched it. There was a lot of fanfare in the real estate world about it, but just this past week, I believe, 60 Minutes did a piece on buyers competing with our buyers. So basically traditional buyers competing with those people. So Alan, if you could hold tight, if you don't mind, before we go to the break, tell our listeners where they can reach you at, your contact information.
So my email is alan@alandonald.com. That's ALAN@ALANDONALD.com. Or my phone is 843-864-3777.
Awesome.
My website is buyhomesinCharleston.com.
Awesome. So guys, hold tight. We're going to take a quick break here and we'll be right back. As I always say, if y'all got cane, pat, serve, let's get that down out of the cabinet and call me so I'll be on the way to get some. But y'all hold tight and we'll get right back to the show. Congratulations to this week's Realtor of the Week for Exit Realty Low Country Group. None other than Mimi Eubanks, your country realtor. You can reach Mimi at 843-730-3327 or text My Realtor Mimi. That's MyRealtorMeme to 85377. Y'all give y'all country realtor a holler now. Guys, and we are back. Second segment, Exit Strategies Radio Show. I'm your host, Coleman J. Millett, broker and owner of Exit Realty Low Country Group in beautiful North Charleston, South Carolina. Hey, we have a dynamic show. We're having a great time today. We have with us, yes, we have with us today in studio, we have with us Alan Donald with let's be clear, the Alan Donald team over at Keller Williams Realty, Charleston, Mount Pleasant. Alan, thank you again so much for joining us today.
Thank you for inviting me.
Awesome. So look, before the break, we were kind of just quote unquote peeling back the first layer of the onion, if you will, related to our buyers, investor buyers, institutional buyers, whatever you assign that odd to, it all means the same thing. It's people that's buying or groups that's buying homes that they ain't gonna live in. And oftentimes they're larger, corporations or larger, groups, and they're coming in buying cash and things of that nature. So one of the things, and you and I kind of talked about this, as we were beginning the show briefly, but one of the things that was, for example, prime example, in my neighborhood, our HOA association is looking to put in a restriction on either the number of rentals or other restrictions that are designed to hinder mass iBuyer purchases in the neighborhood. And I'm gonna share this experience with you. I didn't get a chance to say this earlier, but as I get to your thoughts on it, one thing. So recently in not directly in my subsection, but in an adjoining neighborhood, we actually had a client who was very specific when they went to sell their home. They got offers, and they obviously got institutional, offers, and they were very specific that they did not want to sell the home to an investor. That they wanted the home to go to someone who would live there, be a part of, and contribute. Those were their words, to the community. So, our buyers, what are your thoughts?
It's an interesting one. So the iBuyers is mostly institutional money, hedge funds, REITs, big money from Wall Street that have decided that getting into residential rentals is a good business. Like any institutional investor, it's all about the dollars. Dollars and cents, nothing else matters. So I can understand why a neighborhood might get a little bit uncomfortable with a large amount of investment-owned homes in their neighborhood because, in reality, renters don't take as much care of houses as owners because they have less skin in the game. And yes, I mean, I can understand why they want to restrict iBuyers. However, I question whether that's going to be challenged in court because that's an anti-competitive practice. As a single seller, you can do it. You can sell to whoever you want. But as an organization, I don't know. It's yet to be determined. However, I think the iBuyer thing is kind of starting to taper off. I think if you remember, Zillow closed their iBuyer division not long ago. That tells you something. It's maybe not such a great business like they thought it was. So I think that as the market shifts again, we might see fewer and fewer iBuyers as time goes. I hope, because other buyers, it's very hard to compete with cash offers. However, like I said before, the iBuyers are smart. They always give themselves an out, and normally they're not the best offers ever, but they are hard to compete because they're cash offers.
That is very fair. Typically, you see them. I mean, even in current climate, you see these offers come in above, asking. Usually they have what we would say is a fairly quick close, not, instantaneous, but a shorter time period. But their agreements do come typically with language, in their agreements or contracts that are advantageous to them to, cancel a contract and walk away. And I know within the industry, and I'm pretty sure, Alan, that you've seen this as well, but, sometimes it is last minute. I'm talking about 2 or 3 days before closing, and they're exercising some clause that allows them to walk away. And as a seller who's already negotiated, maybe perhaps you negotiated a new house, you've already packed up the existing house, you may have a moving truck or pod in the front yard that you've either packed or packing. Your stuff maybe already be going in storage, whatever that may look like. Now at the 9th hour, now you have this go on. And granted, in all fairness, that can happen in any transaction. Always can have a last minute issue or delay. But, that's one of the things that we're definitely seeing more so in this scenario. As I shared, about people looking to say, okay, well, look, we want to have this. We want people to buy in, but into the community. But I'm also going to give you on the other side of the coin something, and, for your opinion, a lot of people don't think about. So as institutions own all these properties, eventually they control the market, which means that either, let's say, for example, for whatever reason, we need to liquidate cash, we can have a mass sell-off, plummet property values, and that impacts everyone. So that's one thing. Essentially talking about one buyer owning so many homes in a given area, neighborhood, or what have you, so they can control that, or they could considerably increase prices as well because they decide they want to sell a house and they essentially run the prices up. So that's a very interesting scenario. What are your thoughts on that?
Well, I think in Charleston particularly, they don't have the necessary mass to affect the market that much. Because let's figure it out. I mean, at the moment we have 1,000 listings on the MLS, and we need about 6,000 to balance the market. So even if 5,000 listings come on the market tomorrow, we'll be at a neutral balanced market. It won't be a buyer's market yet. So we're so far behind in inventory that I don't think they have the amount of homes necessary to move our market yet. In other markets, it might be possible. In Charleston, I don't think it's that much of a worry, to be honest with you.
Okay, and that makes perfect sense. So that's definitely an interesting conversation. So, you've been here, we've been here before. So let me ask you your opinion, like from where we are, where do you think we're going?
Uh-huh.
What do you think is going to
You're
happen?
asking me, my crystal ball is really blurry. That's a hard one. Well, I think that we need to look at it in different bits and pieces. In 2005, our boom market was driven by speculation and free money. You got a heartbeat. Here's 105%, no questions asked. I don't need to know how much you earn. I didn't need to know anything. Here it is. I mean, you saw The Big Short, right? The movie.
I think so. Yeah.
That was exactly how it happened in 2005. The boom today is for different reasons. It's more because of more demand. I mean, buyers say, well, there's nothing to buy. That is not true. We sold the biggest amount of homes last year. We sold over 22,000 homes in the MLS, which was a record year. So we're selling a lot. It's just that demand is so much higher that we can't keep up. And so that's what's driven prices up. The huge demand that suddenly after, May of 2020, the phone started ringing and it hasn't stopped. And for many reasons. First of all, people are moving from bigger cities to the suburbs or to smaller cities. So that's happening. Second, everyone learned that, you can work remotely from anywhere. So there's a lot of people that are saying, why am I in a big city paying big prices, huge property taxes when I can do the same, earn the same money and live in a nicer, cheaper place like Charleston?
Exactly.
And so those are, and then interest rates are still at historical lows. And people say, 4.5%. Well, 4.5% was a wonderful interest rate 6 years ago.
Yep.
And so we're still very, very affordable. If you see actually the affordability curve, which is the relationship between home prices, interest rates, and salaries, we're still pretty affordable compared to the last 3 decades. So those are different factors. So where are we going with that? Again, the crystal ball is very, and in any external big event can affect demand, can affect supply. So it's hard to gauge. But I think we're going to have, in my opinion, a short inventory for at least another year. It's going to take a long time to catch up with all the demand if the demand stays level.
That's fair.
If interest rates go to 7%, suddenly demand will drop and will require a lot fewer listings to balance that market.
That's fair.
Go ahead.
So let me ask you this, and again, because we've been here. So do you remember what interest rates were when you got into the business?
Ooh, no. But I think it's around the 6.5%.
So my recollection, the rates were 6.5, 7, 6.5 or so, and they went up, to 7 and some change or what have you. And then, obviously depending, but that was back when, rates and stuff really were influenced by, buyers' ability. There was a swing, if the buyer was more challenged, then that rate, the risk was higher. So the rate was higher. So there was a significant amount of that. I mean, granted, from all that stuff in the recession, that's what we got. We HVCC, we got, truth in lending and all this other stuff that kind of came to counteract those things, the practices that were taking place prior to. But, that's the conversation that we get. People always hung up on the rate, and I understand the thought process, but we've been through way worse rates. Mark Weeks says this thing, closing attorney says this thing all the time, that either got into the business or bought his first house, he had an 18 and change percent interest rate. So,
Right.
We get hung up on the rate, which is important. Don't get me wrong, but nonetheless, it could be far worse. And we seemingly forget that their rate could be much higher, significantly higher than what it is. So, Alan, thank you so much for joining us. Look, if you don't mind, one more time for our listeners, please give them your contact information, how they can reach you with any questions.
Awesome. Thank you, Corin. So I'll start with my website, buyhomesinCharleston.com. Easy to remember. Then my email, alan@alandonald.com. And then my phone number is 843-864-3777.
Awesome. Thank you so much. So for our listeners, guys, thank you so much for tuning in and being a part of the Exit Strategies radio show family. Alan, again, thank you so much for being a part of the family. Every time you're a guest, when you're a guest with us, you are part of the family. So for our listeners, guys, know what we always say to you. One, this is a thing right now. Go love on somebody this week. Don't just let pass the person by on the wayside, on the side of the road, and leave them there. Go help them. Help somebody. Love on somebody this week, guys, as we continue to encourage and empower you all. Our mission here, we say it, we mean it, is to empower our community through financial literacy and real estate education. As we always say here at Exit Strategies Radio Show, we love you, I love you, and we're going to see you guys out there in them streets. Thank you so much.